You guys, Erin here. I am back with another moon update for you. What I'm going to be talking about today is this new super moon slash solar eclipse we've got coming up here on Friday, March 29th. The new moon peaks at 3:58 a.m. Pacific time, and this is coming through the sign of Aries, 9 degrees Aries. Now, if you've been paying any kind of attention to astrology, you have to have known that March is an absolutely wild time. First of all, we had the total lunar eclipse a couple weeks ago. And of course, we had the spring equinox. Then we've got this solar eclipse. The same day of the solar eclipse, in fact, hours after the solar eclipse, Mercury is retrograding from the sign of Aries back into the sign of Pisces. That's very significant. And the day after this eclipse, Neptune moves into the sign of Aries, okay? This is a lot of really strong, and really the combination of it all is like revolutionary, like new world kind of energy coming through here. So what I'm going to do in this recording, first of all, I'm going to break down the sign of Aries for you, because just like any new moon, and keep in mind, this is a super moon, this is a time to manifest new beginnings and growth that related to the sign the moon is transiting through. So manifesting this Aries growth into our life. And this is extremely significant because this is the last North Node solar eclipse we will be having in the sign of Aries for 18 years. That North Node is what pumps energy in, okay? So this is a powerful time to be manifesting Aries, the warrior, the sign of I am, the pioneer, okay? Manifesting this Aries growth into our life. And I will also be pulling up the chart, of course, and showing you all these other very prominent astrological forces that we're receiving at the time of this solar eclipse. I'm talking really, really strong stuff here. Uranus is also very, very strong at this time and making some very strong aspects. Okay. And then, of course, I'm also going to be talking about certain parts of the body that are ruled by the sign of Aries, because these parts of our body become sensitized anytime anything up in the sky transits the sign of Aries. Well, I'll just say this right now, and I'll go into further detail when we get later into the recording, but Aries rules the brain. Okay, so with that said, it's when we have a solar eclipse, what happens is it's like, of course, we're always receiving the sun's energy, our source energy, it's our vital force. Okay, but when we have a solar eclipse, it's like that is cut off momentarily. This is a partial solar eclipse, but still, it's very strong. During the eclipse, that energy is cut off. But then the moment the eclipse is over, it's like a surge or like a shock of that energy coming through. And because it's coming through the sign of Aries, it's going through the brain. Okay, so it's definitely a good idea to be paying a little extra attention to these parts of our body. So of course, I will be mentioning some potential herbal remedies to help support these parts of our body. And as usual, I will be mentioning some gemstones that resonate well with the sign of Aries. In case you're super new here, this is something I've been doing for so many years now. Every time we have a new moon, I take my journal, I write down the growth that I want to experience that's related to the sign that the moon is transiting through. And if you're somewhat familiar with your natal chart, or if you've had a reading with me, you can go back to review the video recording to see which area of your life this is specifically manifesting for you. It's important to understand, of course, we're all receiving this solar eclipse as a collective, all of these astrological forces as a collective, but it's also incredibly unique to each and every one of us. You know, this is going to be coming through some area of your life, whether it be your house of career, your house of finances, your house of transformation, your house of communication, your house of physical health. It's got to be coming through somewhere in your chart. So I always incorporate that into my journal, like which theme or which area of my life it's manifesting through. And then I like to take a few gemstones that resonate well with the sign that the moon is transiting through, or just the overall astrological forces, and put them on top of my journal. Now, I always leave a full extensive list of gemstones that resonate well with the sign the moon is transiting through in the description below. But please do not feel discouraged or feel like you're missing out on something if you don't have any of these gemstones. In fact, a new moon is a perfect time to be manifesting more gemstones into your life if you so desire. And what I generally do is I work with a trio. If you just, they say you just got a few gemstones hanging around your house. Personally, what I would always encourage people to start with is one piece of like a clear crystal, like clear crystal quartz, something of that nature. And then one that's a little more protective, like a darker colored stone, like a black or gray, or even some agates can be very protective. And then whatever other kind of stone you got hanging around. I generally like to work with trios. Okay, so there's that. Now, let's just get into this. Okay, so the sign of Aries. Aries is what we call the cardinal fire sign. When I say cardinal, what I'm talking about is a force that comes through all of the cardinal signs, Aries, Libra, Cancer, Capricorn. When the sun enters into these zodiac signs, it means we're entering into a new season. Okay, when the sun enters into the sign of Aries, the spring equinox, we're going into springtime. So with that said, you've just envisioned the energy of the cardinal signs. It's about projecting forward into something new, but especially in the sign of Aries, because Aries is cardinal fire. Okay, fire is very strongly associated with energy, period. So it's like forceful energy. And not only that, but it's like when we think about this cardinal fiery Aries energy coming through, a lot of people will actually call the spring equinox the real new year, which I can get on board with that. I generally refer to it as the zodiacal new year. Okay, so it's projecting an opportunity for new beginnings. And keep in mind, 6 months from now, the moon will be full in the sign of Aries. That would be the peak of this growth cycle. And it's also important to understand we're always going through all kinds of growth cycles. Some that are based only on our own natal chart, some that are based on our progressions, some that are going on up in the sky. There's all sorts of cycles that we're going through. But since the moon, she's like the distributor of our vital force. Okay, the sun is our vital force. The sun is, the moon is more like the distributor of that. So that's why I really like working with these lunar cycles. Okay, so Aries, cardinal fire. Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars, often referred to as the planet of war. Mars is what influences and things like aggression and dominance, okay? Mars is this energy of take action. Mars actually rules over our muscles and our adrenals, the things that make us take action. That's in part why the sign of Aries is very action-oriented. Now, the motto for the sign of Aries is I am. Okay, it's like the infant of the zodiac because it's the first sign of the zodiac. Again, it comes in when we enter into spring forward. Okay, well, that infant energy. In fact, you'll notice a lot of Aries people. When I say Aries people, I'm mostly talking about Sun in Aries and Aries rising, but this can happen with other placements in Aries. A lot of these people, like their skin they don't age until much later on in life because it's a youthful energy. And that I am, when we think about incarnating into this world and a baby is born, like the first thing is I am. It's not I think or I want or I need or I know. It's I am. This is what I am. And that sign of Aries is all about like, I am this, okay? I'm the warrior. Now, the sign of Aries is represented by the ram that will just ram whatever the heck is in its way. I used to work on a farm where they had a couple rams, and those guys were aggressive, man. They're strong animals. We would try to put up a fence to keep them from getting into the crops, but they would just barrel through anything. They need a strong fence. That's Aries energy. It's this very, very ram-like energy. Now, please do not get me wrong. This does not mean that everybody who's born under the sign of Aries is going to be like this. I actually got quite a few sweetheart Aries friends. You know who you are out there. I've got an Aries in my family who's actually very shy and timid. But this is because there's things in the natal chart that can counteract somebody's typical Sun and Aries energy. But the sign of Aries in and of itself, like this is the energy that we are receiving right now while the sun's going through the sign of Aries, but it's also influencing this project forward fiery kind of energy. Going back to the element of fire, fire's the most important element in the process of transformation. This is, a lot of people will choose to be cremated, or when somebody passes, generally will light a candle. Or if there's something that you're having some kind of a, spiritual ceremony or something like that, people generally light a candle of sorts or sit around a fire pit, that sort of thing, because that fire energy, it projects, it brings us through the transformational process. And there's no way around it. We are all going through a very powerful transformational process, especially through this year of 2025 and also 2026. Okay, so how do you want to grow in these ways that are related to this sign of Aries? You know, it's like I'm thinking about the combination of Aries and Pisces energy could be very, very creative because it's the dreamer Pisces, but then the one that takes action there. Let's say you're an artist and you been putting off, putting your art up into, having an art show, that sort of thing, or maybe whatever it is, whatever you're creating, saying you're building something and you've just kind of been slacking on it, that sort of thing. This is a time to really take action with what it is you want to do. How do you want to grow in these ways like the warrior? How do you want to step into some courage and some self-starting energy? Okay, so there's that. Let me go ahead and pull up the chart here. If you're new here, I work with geocentric Western astrology. And with that said, what we're looking at here is basically a snapshot of what we would call the tropical zodiac at the time of this new moon solar eclipse. With geocentrics, that means we put Earth right here in the middle of this thing. These things right here are the symbols for the planets and the celestial bodies. Like here's Mars, here's Jupiter, here's Uranus. When we go in the wheel just a little ways, these things are the symbols for the zodiac signs that all of these things will be beaming through onto Earth at the time of this new moon solar eclipse. So let's start here. Here's the moon. Here's the sun. Here is the symbol for the sign of Aries, the glyph for the sign of Aries. If you look at it, it kind of looks like a ram. And not only that, but it's like, again, Aries, I'll just say this. Aries, yeah, we already talked about it, it rules the brain, but it rules really the top of the head. Aries people will have a strong tendency to overexert themselves because the energy's flying out the top of the head. And that glyph really reminds me of that sort of thing. Okay, now at 9 degrees and 0 minutes, that's really interesting. It's very rare that we'll get a new moon or a full moon or something like that where there's no arc minutes involved. So this is kind of neat. At 9 degrees Aries, we're still in the first decan, okay? This is very pure Aries energy. Like once something gets past 10 degrees, it really starts to blend in with other zodiac signs. So this is still within that first 10 days of Aries season. So it's very strong Aries energy. Now, something I need to point out. In fact, let me say this as well in case people are really new here. Every time that we have a new moon, it means the sun and the moon are in the exact same spot. The way it works is the sun takes a whole year to go around the zodiac. Meanwhile, the moon goes around there every single month. So once a month, the moon catches up to the sun. That's what makes a new moon. And the moon is this like motherly energy, and the sun is this fatherly energy. And so when they come together, it's literally like the mother and father coming together and creating this energetic force, this energetic baby that grows over the next 6 months, again, till we have the full moon in the sign of Aries. What makes it an eclipse is because anytime we have a solar eclipse, we have to be having a new moon. It means the sun and the moon are in the exact same spot. But what makes it an eclipse is either the north or the south node has to be near. And it might not look like it. It might not look like that north node is closed, but it's actually, this would be the new moon of this year that is closest to that north node. Even though the north node is in Pisces, it's still that's what's creating this eclipse, okay? So we see here that we've got this stack up of Pisces energy here, but then boom, it's Aries stuff going through here as well. Again, Pisces is the end. Okay, Pisces is the sign that's like least earthly. Okay, it's this sign that it was a lot of people who have a lot of Pisces energy in their chart. That's like they'll walk around their whole life feeling like I don't feel like I don't belong here. What the heck am I doing here? Versus Aries is the energy of go. Okay, so it's such a trippy like blend of things going on here. But also, this right here is Mercury, which Mercury, in short, is the ruler of our mental function, the intake of information into our consciousness, but also the output of information. Mercury is the messenger of the gods. It's like the nerves that take the information into the spinal cord, but then also the nerves that take the information back out for us to communicate. And Mercury is in retrograde. Mercury is in retrograde till April 7th. But what's significant here is that Mercury went retrograde at 9 degrees Aries at the same spot where this eclipse is taking place. So that's really, really interesting. But also just hours after this eclipse, boop, Mercury goes back into the sign of Pisces. Okay, so retrograde, Mercury retrograde. Think about what Mercury influences: our nervous system, our communication skills. So when Mercury's in retrograde, it's often a good time to kind of reevaluate our thoughts or reevaluate what we're thinking. Or even, for people who are writing stuff, you write stuff for a newsletter or for a book or for social media or whatever it is, some sort of writing or verbal communication. You might want to kind of make sure you go back on that thing and make sure all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted, or potentially just a good time for reviewing it, or again, like reevaluating what's going on, that sort of thing, especially if you've got something in the late degrees of Pisces or the early degrees of Aries. Another thing I want to point out is that if you have anything near, if I say near, basically what I'm talking about is that, let's say, anywhere between 6 and 12 degrees Aries, this is a particularly important solar eclipse for you. Whatever you have at that spot, it's getting a lot of activity. It's going to have that shutdown of energy, but then the spark of energy right after the eclipse. Okay. But also, if you've got anything, again, near 9 degrees, between 6 and 12 degrees Libra, between 6 and 12 degrees Sagittarius or Leo, so those would make a trine, or even squaring this near near 9 degrees Capricorn or Cancer. That means that this eclipse is creating an aspect with whatever that is in your chart. Okay, it's triggering it, it's activating it. And it depends on what kind of an aspect it is, but hopefully you guys are following along here. If you're not, just do the best you can. Okay, so going back to this, Aries, Pisces kind of tick-tocking back and forth energy, let's talk about Neptune for a minute here. So Neptune takes approximately 165 years to go around this entire zodiac, okay? And takes approximately 14 and a half years to go through one zodiac sign. So Neptune moves slowly. So that said, when Neptune changes signs, it's a big deal, okay? Just something that doesn't happen very often. Moreover, we're talking about the very last sign of the zodiac into the very first sign of the zodiac. Now, what Neptune influences is of this dreamy, mystical, like foggy kind of energy, has been going through the sign of Pisces since 2011, basically. I think it really started to pick up momentum in 2012. But Neptune is what rules Pisces, okay? Jupiter also rules Pisces, but Neptune is really what makes Pisces the flowy, mystical, sort of dreamy, where am I kind of energy. That Neptune influences that. And I do feel very, very confident in saying that a whole heck of a lot of people have had a very strong spiritual awakening since 2011. I think back like 2011, that's when all of a sudden these, spiritual gurus started making it big on YouTube. I think about like Teal Swan. I don't know if not everybody knows who Teal Swan is, and there's definitely some controversy around her. But all these like spiritual people are channeling, what's his name, Bashar or something like that. All that stuff has really been growing since 2011. A lot of that has to do with the fact that Neptune has been going through the sign of Pisces. Now at 29 degrees, 58 minutes, really doesn't get any more anoretic than that. That's the last degree. Okay, anything that is at 29 degrees, it's like a power spot. Okay, but it's also a point of like, it's so close. It's like Neptune's so close to the next door over, like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, like, okay, can create confusion, but it's also, if you've got anything near 29 degrees Pisces, be mindful, because this could create some like big turbulence, especially for things like escapism, not wanting to be here. That sort of thing can very much go on if that Neptune at the 29th degree of Pisces is hitting something in your chart. Okay, good idea to stay focused on this Aries energy. I'm ready to take action. I'm ready to move forward. Okay, and to be very specific, Neptune's going to move into the sign of Aries on the 30th of March, and we'll be there until October, but then October retrogrades back into the sign of Pisces, and we'll be there until early next year. I want to say it's maybe February of 2026. Then Neptune really gets going through this sign of Aries. And yes, it is true, I've mentioned it before, that we went into the Civil War. I can't remember if it was the day before or the day after, the last time that Neptune moved into Aries. I personally don't, I think there is potential for there to be another big war, if I'm being totally honest. I don't want to scare anybody. Everybody, it's okay. Everything's going to be okay. But I do think that there's potential for another big war, but I don't think it's going to happen quite yet. I don't think it's going to happen yet. Okay, so there's that. Now, let's talk about all this stuff. Okay, here's Venus. Actually, let me go back to the North Node. So here's the North Node. North Node is like a pump that pumps energy in. So it's pumping this Piscean energy in. The North Node will be in Pisces until July of 2026. We're all receiving, even if you have nothing in the sign of Pisces in your chart, you're still receiving the pumping this Pisces energy in. But when that pump, the North Node, Rahu, is next to another celestial body, even if it's an asteroid, whatever it is, it's pumping more of that energy in. So here we have Venus very, very close to the North Node. So Venus, she loves to be in Pisces. Venus is exalted in Pisces. It's like a romantic energy. It's all about, the higher octave. Neptune is Pisces ruler. Neptune is said to be the higher octave of Venus. So it's like when we think about Venus, Greek mythology, Aphrodite, this beautiful, voluptuous, long, blowing hair and just absolutely gorgeous energy that creates harmony. It's a very feminine energy that we receive from Venus. Pisces is also a very feminine energy, okay? So it's Venus, she gets to work with the energy of oneness and romance and creativity, but she's also in retrograde. If this is hitting some in your chart, it might be like a time of almost like reevaluating something that has to do with Venus, beauty or relationships or love or romance. Might very much be a time of reevaluating that. But there's even more of it being pumped in because she's next to the North Node, and so is Neptune. These guys are all next to each other. So we're receiving a whole heck of a lot of this Piscean energy, but also Aries is saying, well, I'm ready to take action here. Okay, now Saturn has been going through Pisces since March of 2023. And Saturn is Mr. Rigid, okay? Saturn is the ruler of things like discipline and boundaries and restrictions and obligations. And Saturn is by no means a fun character. And as I've said so many times before, Saturn going through Pisces really can, especially if this is, when I say hitting something in your chart, it could be it's conjunct something in your chart, or it's trining something in your chart, or squaring something in your chart, where you're taking your spiritual practices very seriously and maybe putting boundaries around yourself. Because, I'm going through this, spiritual journey right now, and people keep trying to take me out to, go do things that are not exactly of a spiritual nature, and you're creating boundaries for yourself, that sort of thing. But also it's okay. Saturn going through Pisces can also, it's like, it can have a lot to do with actually like feeling the sorrows in the world. Pisces is actually quite a weepy energy. I mean, really kind of all the water signs can, but Pisces being the last sign of the zodiac, it's very, very sensitive. It's very much a sign of empathy and sensitivities. And so Saturn, Mr. Rigid, creating the boundaries, it can definitely make people like be very consciously aware of the sorrows in the world. So that's something else to be mindful of. And what Saturn is going to do here is he's going to move forward into the sign of Aries in May, but he's only going to be there, I think, until November or something like that, and then retrograde back on the sign of Pisces and be in Pisces till the end of February of 2026. So that's also, and same with Neptune. Neptune's going to move into Aries and then retrograde back into Pisces. So we really are still, especially with that North Node in there, we're still receiving this very heavy dose of Pisces energy. But again, there's also this influence of let's take action. Maybe you've been dreaming of something you want to create. Maybe you've just been having very, incredible dreams, period, with all this Pisces. Pisces is very strongly associated with things like dreams, but dreaming something up. And now all of a sudden, this Aries energy says, let's do something about it. You've been pipe dreaming about this for a long time. Let's actually take action with it. Okay, so there's that. Now, let's talk about Mars, because Mars is making some really strong connections with things. Here's Mars going through the sign of Cancer still, and I think that's until maybe the first or second week of April. Mars going through Cancer. Mars has been in Cancer forever. It's been like 3 months, something like that. But Mars is Aries ruler. Again, think about, this cardinal fiery energy. Mars, the planet of war. Mars influences things that are of an aggressive nature, or burns, or accidents. Okay, because Mars doesn't think about repercussions of injuries. Mars just goes. The sign of Cancer is another very sensitive energy. The motto is I feel. It's the crab that wants to keep itself protected. When I say the crab, it's represented by the crab. The crab that wears this very hard shell that can't be penetrated. It has to, because the insides are so soft and sensitive and squishy. And with that said, I do feel like Mars going through Cancer, again, especially if this is hitting something in your chart, making an aspect to something in your chart, there very well could be this influence of I need to keep myself protected, or I need to protect my family, like a protective kind of energy that's going on here with Mars going through the sign of Cancer. I also think of Mars and Cancer as like a mother going to war to protect her family. That's what, because the sign of Cancer is kind of like the nurturer, the mother of the zodiac. Cancer can be very strong. Do not get me wrong. I know some very, very strong athletic Cancers out there. But that's because it's ruled by the moon. The moon is the second brightest light in the sky. But anyway, with that said, there's this energy of needing to protect, or again, like energy that's going on that's like, I have to do something about this. And it's an emotional drive. That's what I'm looking for here. The emotional drive to do it. And Mars here is making a very strong trine over to Saturn. This is both of the malefics in water signs, okay? Saturn's a malefic, rules over things like chronic disease and, again, blockages and that sort of thing, versus Mars is like the lesser malefic. Mars influences, again, things like injuries and accidents and aggression, okay? But we need these guys. Mars, again, rules our muscles and our adrenals. Saturn rules our bones, the structure of our bodies. So these are like masculine energies that we absolutely need, but they're not exactly fun or jolly kind of energies. But they are making this trine together right now. Okay, first of all, if you live somewhere near water, you might want to be a little extra careful. Again, these are water signs. You might want to be a little careful. Let's say like next to the beach or next to a river or someplace where there could potentially be a flood. I know we're not necessarily in flood season, but you never know these days because there's a lot of weird stuff going on. But also the waters in the body, the fluids in the body, the lymphatic system, anything that has to do with the fluids in the body, might want to be a little extra careful with that. Make sure you're drinking good, clean water. Oh boy, I could go off on a tangent right now. If you live in a city, I really, no matter where you live, I would be very mindful about, like, I wouldn't be drinking just tap water from the city. I would get yourself a good filter, like a ceramic, what do they call them? The Berkey filters, that sort of thing. So you're drinking clean water, because water is so important. Water really is life. It's so important that we're getting good, clean water into our bodies. So that's something else I'd be paying attention to. Okay, also, going back down here to this Aries stuff. So here's Chiron, the wounded healer. Okay, Chiron has so much to do with the wounds that we experience from early childhood. And we all have them, obviously for some people it's going to be more traumatic than others. But it's like Chiron will influence something of a wound from our early childhood it gets pushed down. It's like from our total youth. And so by the time we're preteen, completely forgot about the time, I don't know, you felt like mom was ignoring you or dad did this or something that happened in your home. But then as we go through our life, we're offered certain opportunities to heal those wounds. And when we do, we end up becoming a healer ourselves, whether it doesn't have to be for like on a professional level, helping your friends heal through something. That's Chiron's energy. Going through the sign of Aries, the warrior, it's like, let's heal ourselves. Chiron will be in Aries until 2027. But I'm putting a lot of emphasis on this because this is look at this square. This is an exact square. It's just off by minutes. Chiron is, the wounded healer going through the sign of the warrior, and making this, a square creates a force. It makes things happen. And it's squaring, again, here's Aries, which is ruled by Mars, and this square it's making to Mars ups the ante. And not only that, but these are cardinal signs. Cardinal says take force. So this really could have a massive influence on healing, especially wounds from early childhood. For yourself, doesn't mean you shouldn't seek help if you need help with your healing journey, but this is definitely something that would influence, I can do this. Okay, now let's point out poor little lonely Jupiter over here. So Jupiter, he's not making any aspects to anything. Okay, Jupiter is the great benefic. Jupiter influences things that are of an abundant nature. I was just thinking about this recently, going way back to my early days of studying astrology through the American Federation School of Astrologers. What part, like the beginning of the program is they said, and this is so funny to think about because the internet was available, but this was so long ago that we didn't, like they actually legit sent you the books in the mail and you had to do your homework through, actual pen and paper and then snail mail your homework back to the teacher and then she'd send it back with the grade on it. But with that, the beginning of the process was they would give you, like, say, we'll learn about Jupiter. Here's a list of key words that help you understand Jupiter's influence. And one of the top words was Santa Claus. And I remember being like, huh? Because Jupiter rules Sagittarius. Sagittarius isn't Christmas season. Jupiter rules Pisces. Pisces certainly isn't Christmas season. Well, how is Jupiter connected to Santa Claus? But I actually entirely get it now because Santa Claus, okay, let's pretend Santa Claus is real. It's this, Santa Claus is this energy of going across the entire world to deliver packages for all the children. That's so Jupiter. Jupiter is all about long distance travel and being charitable, giving out the gifts and being jolly about it. That's very Jupiter energy. Jupiter can also be the bringer of wisdom, a bringer of wisdom. Jupiter can influence things that are of a very philosophical and faith-based and expansive nature. And here's Jupiter going through the sign of Gemini, which Gemini is the student. Gemini is the one that's paying attention to all the little facts. Gemini's motto is, I think. So this is especially, again, if this is hitting something in your chart, and really for all of us. Jupiter is going through Gemini until July of 2025. It's an incredible influence for studying things that are above and beyond just your average public school curriculum. Okay, it's like expanding the consciousness, bringing in things that are of even a metaphysical nature, or even studying things of an esoteric nature, that sort of thing. Jupiter going through Gemini can actually be great for that. Okay, next up, let's talk about Uranus here. So here's Uranus, where Uranus is really strong right now because, first of all, is like finishing up in the sign of Taurus. What I mean by that is that this July, Jupiter's in Gemini till June. Uranus is in Taurus until July. This July, Uranus will move into the sign of Gemini. Then later on in the year, we'll retrograde back into the sign of Taurus just briefly. And then in 2026, Uranus is completely done in the sign of Taurus. Uranus has been going through the sign of Taurus since 2018. Okay, so this is another big one. It's incredible to have Neptune and Uranus, and not have Pluto just changed signs. A lot of massive revolutionary changes going on for all of us here on Earth. But when I say that's what I mean by finishing up. It's like he's got those last little things he's got to do in this sign of Taurus. Uranus influences things that are of a revolutionary nature, a technological nature. Uranus brings shocking surprises. Uranus is radical. Uranus is reckless. Okay. I know a whole heck of a lot of Taurus people out there. I would say the vast majority of my clientele, maybe not vast, but definitely most of my clientele over really even since 2018 have been Tauruses. And it's because they're like, what the heck is going on in my life right now? Well, Uranus has been coming through there and creating some havoc. But Uranus ultimately wants freedom. Okay, Uranus is like the kind of energy that would throw riots on the street for the purpose of freedom, like rebelling against authority. Okay, And here's Taurus. Taurus is like the earth of the earth signs. Taurus rules our earthly things, things like money and our material possessions and our food. Okay, think about all this crazy stuff that's going on, especially right now with the food. All of a sudden, certain food dyes are getting banned. Everybody's talking about how bad seed oils are. Everybody's, how terrible it is that they've been spraying glyphosate on our crops forever. I mean, a lot of us have been knowing this has been going on for a long time, but it's really coming out into the, masses right now. People who didn't know this before are finally going, wait, what? What have they been doing to our food? That's Uranus bringing this revolutionary change. Okay. And also with finances as well. I actually feel like these next couple of years, we're going to see incredible changes go on with overall banking and finances and digital currencies. I think we're really on the verge of a major revolution involving those things. And this eclipse very well could be playing a part in that, because Uranus is making a very strong sextile over here to Mars. Uranus is making a very strong sextile over to Saturn, and even a little bit with the North Node and Venus, and even kind of a little bit with Neptune here. Those sextile aspects create opportunity. They open up new things, okay? And Uranus loves new things. That's Uranus is out with the old way of doing things. We're bringing in a new revolutionary way of doing it. So that's very, very prominent. We've also got a sextile going up to the South Node here. So yeah, when I say Uranus is working with strength right now, I really mean it. Okay, then let's let's touch on Pluto and then we'll do the South Node. Okay, so Pluto is going to be going through the sign of Aquarius until 2044. Okay, it's another 19 years that Pluto's bringing a transformational process to all things Aquarian. Okay, Aquarius is the sign of humanity. In fact, going back to Uranus being this like revolutionary kind of spasmodic energy, Uranus rules Aquarius. Aquarius is like the most dynamic sign of the zodiac. It's the sign of revolutionary changes, technology, kind of rebelling against authority. Again, being ruled by Uranus, this certainly doesn't mean everybody who's in Aquarius is going to rebel against authority. But the sign of Aquarius in and of itself is the people for the people. And I think we're going to see incredibly powerful changes go on in things that involve technology, obviously, AI, robots, all that sort of weird stuff, but also just overall with humanity. And I know I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again, that I really do feel like what's going to happen here in later on this year in 2025, but then also again in 2026, is we're going to have a very strong trine going from Pluto over to Uranus. Not only that, but they're also going to be making sextiles to Neptune. So, but mostly I want to focus on Uranus and Pluto making this trine together, both going through air signs. The air signs all very much an electrical energy, very much about, again, like technology. They're both signs, Gemini and Aquarius are both very much signs that have to do with things like social media or podcasts or networking and that sort of thing. But it's air. I'm thinking about, the chemtrails, stuff that, and if you don't know that, like, we really, I've still seen people in comment sections saying, that's a contrail, that's nothing to worry about. And I'm like, oh my God. Yes, we've been getting sprayed with terrible stuff for a very long time. I remember noticing it back in 2011. And it's just progressively gotten worse. I feel like there's going to be something that goes on involving that. I think not immediately, but I think over these next 3 years or so, with this connection between Uranus and Pluto, both going through air signs, I think we're about to see some changes involving that. It's been tough because what are we supposed to do about it? It's an airplane that's flying up there. There's nothing we can do about it. We're all just sitting down here getting choked by the stuff that they're spraying up there. But I think that humanity is going to come together and figure out a way to put that to an end. Again, especially over these next 3 years, with the air signs being heavily activated by revolutionary power players, Uranus and Pluto. Okay, I hope that made sense to everybody. Lastly here, South Node going to the sign of Virgo. That's going on until July of 2026. The node's basically go backwards. They're almost always in retrograde, okay? The South Node is like a drain point. It takes things away. If you've got anything in your natal chart between 27, even 28 degrees Virgo, all the way down to 0 degrees Virgo, between now and July of 2026, that drain point is going to be draining something away, okay? Let's say you've got your Mars in Virgo. All of a sudden that South Node goes over your Mars. You don't have the energy that you did unless there's something that's counteracting it. Or maybe it's your Mercury. All of a sudden your mental function isn't so clear. So that's something else to be paying attention to. Okay, so there's that. I think I covered everything I wanted to there. Let's talk about body parts. Okay, so we already mentioned Aries rules the brain. Basically, the sign of Aries, which, by the way, I did do a pretty in-depth medical astrology video for the sign of Aries. It's like a month ago. You're just going to have to scroll through my channel. You'll see it, Medical Astrology Aries. But in short, Aries rules kind of like from the top jaw, even the teeth in the upper jaw, all the way up to the top of the brain. Okay, and 9 degrees Aries, where this eclipse is basically right at the pineal gland. Okay, if you don't know what the pineal gland is, I highly encourage you to go do a little bit of research on that, because the pineal gland is what makes our reality what our reality is. So when we think about this jolt of energy at, right as the eclipse ends, it's definitely a good idea to be paying a little extra attention to these parts of our body. So let's start with wood betony. Can be great for calming the nerves in the brain. In fact, I don't have any wood betony right now, and I think I'll go get some before this. Calming the nerves in the brain. Borage is great because, okay, again, Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars rules the adrenals. A lot of Aries people will overexert themselves. Their adrenal glands get shot, that sort of thing. Borage can be great for like reviving or renewing the adrenal glands. I know a lot, especially, the women around my age and they're like mid to late 40s or even 50s, adrenal stuff can definitely go on. Borage can be very, very helpful for that. And then also yarrow. Yarrow is, okay, yarrow's generally thought of as like a protector. A lot of people will actually just wear like a medicine pouch and put yarrow in the medicine pouch. Or you can, make it into a tea. All these things you can do with a tea, and you can do a tincture as well. I think I would probably prefer a tea with yarrow and borage and wood betony. But anyway, going back to yarrow is also, it can almost like balance out or even equalize the flow of the blood in the body. Sign of Aries is also, in essence, associated with the blood, being ruled by Mars. Mars has a little bit of an influence on the blood as well. Okay, so these are the 3 things, especially something, the wood betony for calming the nerves in the brain. Those are the things that I'm going to be indulging in for this solar eclipse in the sign of Aries. Now, gemstones. So the dedicated zodiacal birthstone for the sign of Aries is diamonds. The only reason I have diamonds is because my very sweet Aries grandmother, who passed away like 5 years ago or so, maybe longer than that, left me her diamonds. Clearly not everybody has diamonds. And I'm not like that, but I have a really tough time trying to figure out exactly why Aries, or the dedicated zodiacal birthstone for the sign of Aries, is diamonds, because diamonds really belong to Venus. It might have some sort of a connection with youthfulness. It is said, this is super hyper metaphysical, but it is said that diamonds can actually help to slow down time or slow down aging. That could have something to do with it. But there's so many other stones that resonate beautifully with the sign of Aries. First, I want to talk about red coral. That's why I'm wearing this chakra today. So red coral is really particularly Mars mineral, okay? Red coral belongs to Mars. That's like traditional Jyotish Upaye medical astrology. Okay, and in fact, if for Aries risings, generally speaking, there are some things that could kind of modify this, but generally speaking, it is said that an Aries rising should wear red coral. Red coral influences that Martian kind of energy. I gotta go take on life, that sort of thing. Now, also with red coral, I'm going to mention this. I can't remember the name of this stone, but there's a certain mineral that's usually white. And a lot of times what you'll find is somebody dyed that other mineral, the white mineral, red to make it look like coral, but it's not actually red coral. So if you want to go out and buy red coral, might be a little bit mindful about your source of where you're getting it from and make sure it's real red coral. Okay, next up, I'm going to talk about this right here is blood agate. Now, there's blood agate and red agate. They both really resonate beautifully with the sign of Aries. This is another one that can kind of influence the take action kind of energy, that warrior kind of energy. But the things I'm going to talk about next is that maybe you don't want that Martian kind of energy going on. So the first one I'm going to mention here, this right here is blue kyanite, which really, this is blue kyanite, this is black kyanite. Both kyanites resonate beautifully with the sign of Aries, and they're both very, very protective. Okay, I think I'm probably going to wear this all day on the day of the eclipse. They're both very protective, but the difference between the two is the blue kyanite is a little more calming. In fact, with all this raw Aries energy coming in, something that's of like a light blue nature could be nice for bringing down things that would create inflammation, that sort of thing. And I might as well bring this guy out. This right here is hematite. Hematite also resonates beautifully with the sign of Aries. Hematite's great, also very, very protective. So I think I will leave that there. Those are the stones that I'm going to be working with for this new moon solar eclipse in the sign of Aries. Now, if you would like to schedule an astrology reading so we can dive deeper into this in your own natal chart, please do visit erinwageastrology.com. I do hope to hear from some of you. And until next time, namaste to all of you.